c'est le but. Léo, 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 Léo. Léo, 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 Léo. Léo, 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 Léo. Léo, 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 Léo. Léo, 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 Léo.
Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host, Ed, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. There's been indictments, there's been threatening letters, we've got injuries, comebacks, losses, and potentially another team coming under Qatari ownership in the Premier League. There's a lot to get into, so let me just go ahead and bring in my podcasting partner, Ethan, from PSG Fan Club in Boise. Ethan, thanks for joining the show. And before we get into everything I just talked about, you were recently in Paris for a couple of matches. What games did you see? How was the atmosphere? Kind of break down the starting lineups and what you saw from the stands there at the Parc.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on. I was in Western Europe for 2 weeks, and during that, I did attend my first ever Champions League match. I was at the Parc on Valentine's Day for the Bayern PSG game, and the atmosphere. I'll just start with that one. So obviously, we kind of knew that Mbappé wasn't going to be starting when we went into it, but I was still fairly optimistic. I was thinking, I figured that Bayern would be a team that was going to press a lot, kind of like Marseille, and we saw how we really missed Mbappé in that Marseille Cup match at the Velodrome just like a week or two prior. But I was still fairly optimistic. The atmosphere was really good. I was hoping that the hotel stand would have flares and stuff like they did at the beginning of the year. There's that famous video that everyone likes to post from our first match, I think against Juventus in September, just with the flares. I was hoping they'd have that, but no. But they had a really nice, really big tifo. I think it was an anime reference. I think it was a One Piece reference. I'm not an anime guy, but I think I got the reference right there.
You lost me on that one.
I don't watch any, but the tifo was huge. It was super nice. I was on the opposite end of the stadium in the Boulogne stand, where there was another tifo, and that one was also really nice. But the atmosphere is crazy. If you guys have never been to a Champions League match at the Parc, you will get chills listening to the Champions League anthem. I know I did, and it was pretty rowdy. I was with my best buddy, who is he's a born and raised Parisian, and we went there. And yeah, so game started off, obviously first half was not great. I think we all saw that. We were just really happy to be not losing at halftime, and the adjustments that we made in the second half. It's funny that as soon as we adjusted, as soon as we changed stuff up for the second half, we immediately conceded like 5 minutes into the half. Just hilarious. I mean, not hilarious, but just the whole timing of it just seemed kind of ridiculous. As soon as we start doing things really well, we've conceded a goal. But overall, super fun game. If you have any specifics you want to ask me, then go ahead. But I don't want to waste too much time talking about each match. But yeah, very, very fun atmosphere. Super cool. Like I said, first Champions League match I'd ever attended at the Parc. And then I was at the 4-3 Lille comeback just a week and a half ago. The one with the Messi 95th minute free kick winner. That was also super spicy. Pretty cool that I can say I've seen Eminem all score in the same game. Although that game's a little bit overshadowed now by the Neymar injury. So that is really rough. We know that he'll be out for the Bayern match. I'm sure he's not going to play. There's no way. But I will say I've been to a lot of big sporting events. I've been to a lot of games for my NFL team, and they've got a pretty rowdy fan base with a much bigger stadium than the Parc, which is just about 48,000 people. And I don't think I've ever heard an atmosphere as loud as the Parc on that Messi free kick winner. So that was super fun. Yeah, I was hugging random people that I didn't know. I was getting in on the chants. And actually, for the Lille match, I was in the stand with all the ultras in the thick of it. We were getting all rowdy, and I got to learn a couple of the chants. My French isn't great, but my buddy was there to help me out. So overall, super fun. if you've never been to the Parc, you need to do it.
There you go. Get yourself over to Paris. Let's go back to Bayern Munich's 1-0 win over PSG. That first half, I mean, I was just tweeting up a storm. It was about as poor of a performance from a PSG side that I've seen in several years. We couldn't even get a hold of the ball, and then when we did, Bayern just pressed us and took it away. It was almost like a cat toying with a mouse. I mean, they were just playing with us in that first half. But, then the goal came. Our old friend Kingsley Coman scores in the 53rd minute. And then Galtier decides, okay, now we'll bring on Mbappé. And I'm just like, well, why didn't you bring him on at half instead of waiting, whatever it was, 6-7 minutes into the second half? Like bring him on at halftime, because when we saw him come onto the pitch, it was a completely different game. I'm sure you in the stadium, you probably felt the energy from the crowd when Mbappé came. Even when he was warming up, I saw videos of the crowd getting hyped for that. So talk about the energy in the stadium when Mbappé came on, and was it as noticeable in the stadium, the momentum change when Mbappé was on the pitch?
Oh yeah, it was instant. Everyone was looking over from where I was at in the Boulogne stand. We were looking to the left. That's where the players' sideline was. And yeah, as soon as we saw Kylian warming up, I think he started warming up just before the goal. I can't remember. No, he came on 60th minute, I think, or 55th. I don't know. Can't remember. But when he started warming up, yeah, people were getting we're getting amped, and the atmosphere definitely elevated. And then yeah, when he came on, right off the bat, we had I don't know who had the pass, but had a lofted through ball, and he kind of got to it. Nothing came of that chance, but just immediately it almost looked like our best opportunity of the match just right off the bat. And yeah, it got pretty loud in there. People were excited, and this is another thing, and some people will disagree with me on this, but there's a debate between some people of, who's the king of Paris. I feel like you got to be a real, very new fan to argue it's Messi, but people argue between Mbappé and Neymar. And I'll just say, at least in the stadium, and this shouldn't be surprising because he's, the hero of France, but just the energy that people, have when Mbappé gets the ball, when he has one touch, it just, yeah, you can just feel it in the stadium. So yeah, that stadium loves Kylian Mbappé. Obviously, it's not a surprise, but yeah, from the stand, it was noticeable immediately. The change, the tactic changed. I feel like, yeah, just the game wasn't completely centered on him. We moved it around a bit, but he and Messi have had this great partnership. Messi may not be able to press or anything or play, contribute defensively, but his passing is still probably best in the world. And that shows when Mbappé is on the pitch. So, yeah, it was super fun.
And not only, it seems like for Mbappé, Messi is his, partner in crime. Those two, we saw it against Marseille. Those two linked up for several goals and assists. But Nuno Mendes as well. I thought, especially against Bayern Munich, Mbappé only played half the game basically, but I thought Nuno Mendes could be up there for man of the match as well. Those two were linking up down the flank and creating all sorts of problems for Bayern Munich's defense. And going into the return leg, it does give me some hope, but we'll get into predictions and talking about that match. I do want to talk about Marseille. You and pretty much every other PSG fan were not allowed there because it just doesn't. We're going on like 3-4 years now where none of the ultras or PSG fans can go down to that stadium. So it was a 3-0 win over rivals Marseille at the Stade Vélodrome. PSG's second consecutive win since the defeat to Bayern Munich. We mentioned the comeback win over Lille, and I'm just curious how you assess that match. It was a comfortable win, but as we've seen since, Marseille have definitely fallen off. They lost to I don't even know what division that team is.
Oh, they're in Ligue 2. Annecy is in Ligue 2. Yeah, they're like a mid-table Ligue 2 team this year. Yeah, that was pretty embarrassing for
pretty embarrassing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Coupe de France. So, on one hand, we're like, oh my goodness, we did great. Look at that performance, Messi and Mbappe. And then you kind of see how Marseille has fallen off. So do you still kind of hold that win up like we did maybe after the final whistle and say like, oh, that was a great win, it's something we can really hang our hat on? Or are you kind of like, well, I don't know, was it kind of like fool's gold a little bit there? And so how optimistic do you think fans should be following that match?
Yeah, Marseille has definitely kind of fallen off since then, but I would say, I mean, they did have a loss to Nice at home in January, I think, but other than that, they had been almost perfect at home for a long time. They fell off, and there was a point where they were 5 points behind us, and in the quarterfinals of the Coupe de France, and now they're out of the Coupe de France and they're 8 points behind us, or something like that. So that, it definitely shifted for them pretty quickly, but I'd say it's a pretty good match. I wouldn't say that was a great match from us. 3-0 is a little deceiving. It could have been 4-1, or honestly, if everyone was clinical, it could have been 5-2. The defense still was not perfect by any means, but Donnarumma bailed us out twice, able to keep the clean sheet. And then the offense was clicking. I mean, we really probably should have scored more than 3. So that is nice to see. Marseille don't have the most threatening attack in the world. Alexis Sanchez is not what he used to be, and poor Dimitri Payet is he's just kind of coming off the bench for them at this point. But I'd still feel pretty good about it. I feel like the Lille win was a bit of a, that was a stopgap, I guess you could say. It kind of prevented further damage. I mean, if we had lost that match against Lille, that would have been, we hadn't lost a game at home since April of 2021 against Man City, that Champions League semifinal, and we would have made it 2 losses in a row at home if we hadn't had that Lille comeback. So I feel like that the Lille game, we knew we played bad, but we still got the win. And then just continuing momentum by that really convincing and strong win at the Vélodrome in Marseille. So I don't think this game against Nantes in a couple days is going to change anything drastically unless there's a big injury. But I'd say these 2 games against, pretty good opponents, it's a good, definitely something that we should be optimistic about.
Yeah, and let's not forget going into that match against Marseille, PSG were in first, Marseille second, and it was obviously closer than it is now, but a loss there could have really tightened up the top of the table there. And so we didn't know what was going to happen to Marseille after that. As you mentioned, they were on a pretty good streak, and PSG were struggling a little bit. So there was a lot on the line there domestically, and PSG definitely took care of business. Our friend at EHSAN_PSG on Twitter, they asked a question for us, and they wanted to know, against Bayern Munich, should PSG play the same starting lineup that they put out there for the match against Marseille? And I'll just go through it real quick. It was Kylian Mbappé, Messi up front. Then you had Nuno Mendes and Nordi Mukiele, fullbacks kind of pushing up a little bit. Then you had Fabian Ruiz, Verratti, and Vitinha in the midfield. And then a back 3 of Kimpembe, Ramos, and Marquinhos. We're going to talk about Kimpembe a little bit later. Obviously, he's not going to be able to play against Bayern Munich. But what do you think about that starting lineup? It was obviously successful, especially with Messi and Mbappe. Would you put out the same starting lineup, obviously minus Kimpembe? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I probably would put out the same starting lineup. I know that a lot of guys like Ruiz and Vitinha were starting to get a lot of hate in January when form dipped. But those are 2 guys, especially Vitinha for me. I've been really high on them. I really think that that midfield 3 of Verratti, Vitinha, and Ruiz, I honestly think, and maybe this is a bit naive or optimistic of me, but I am an optimist. I think that can be a midfield 3 that wins the Champions League. Obviously, it's not as flashy as, KCM, which doesn't exist anymore now at Real Madrid, the midfield they had last year, or some of these Barcelona midfields in the past. Or
even PSG's midfields in the past with Blaise Matuidi, Thiago Motta. True. I feel like that midfield was much better than what we have now.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the best midfield we've ever had, though, maybe barring the midfield that we had in the, from 1993 to 1995 or 6, when we were winning trophies a lot. went to a Champions League semifinal and won the Europa League in the 90s. But other than that, yeah, this is probably if you're just talking eras wise, this era of our current midfield this season, probably the third best that we've ever had in club history. I really rate Ruiz and Vitinha, and I think they are. We could see against Marseille they were clicking and they felt confident. You could see it too. Vitinha's out here doing little skill moves. Ruiz kind of runs like a newborn deer, but somehow he makes it work. And the guy is a little more shifty than he looks, even though, like I said, he looks pretty funky running around on the pitch. But I would put out the same lineup. Obviously, you'll have to sub out or put Danilo in for Kimpembe, but other than that, probably identical for me. What about for you?
Yeah, the trick is going to be, what do you do with Kimpembe? So he's not going to be there. Do you bring Nuno Mendes back and maybe, I don't know, do you put in Zaire Emery perhaps, or Pembele? I don't know. Pereira, you could maybe, but not there on the left-hand side. I don't know. It's tricky. I think you're right. I probably would go with the same lineup, find a replacement for Kimpembe there on the left side of the back three, and just kind of hope that Donnarumma has another fantastic match. He had several really solid saves in this game. He's been in a pretty decent run of form. He's a player who's caught a lot of flack, but if he can stand strong and make a couple of really good saves, I think that'll give some momentum to the back three and PSG as a whole. I feel like he could be a little shaky at times. And then I thought Vitinha against Marseille had a really good game, understated, but he didn't make any major mistakes, and he was just overall solid. Verratti is great, and as we go into Bayern Munich, we just have to hope that he doesn't lose his head and nothing happens. If he plays against Nantes coming up, hopefully he doesn't get injured or anything like that, or any player for that matter, but he really is the pivotal player. As I look at the bench and who's available, there's really no one there that I would say, yes, definitely throw them in there. They deserve a starting spot other than maybe Danilo, but no one else is really.
Yeah, you could also argue, because Mukiele started against Marseille, you could argue that, Hakimi obviously could too. Although I know that Hakimi is going to miss the game against Nantes in a couple days. And apparently I saw something on Twitter this morning that Mukiele he's got a little calf injury. So
yeah,
the thing is with Hakimi and versus Mukiele is, I feel like Mukiele is, he's the perfect balanced right back or fullback. Whereas Hakimi is not as good on defense, but he's much better attacking. So you just kind of have to find a balance there. Whatever Galtier thinks he needs to do between playing more attacking, if he thinks he needs to be using the fullbacks more, and maybe having someone like Verratti not drop into a 6 position on defense, but a little more defensive, then we could start Hakimi. But if he wants the midfield to be advancing up the pitch a little more, then Mukiele will probably be the move. But that's probably the only thing that you could really debate.
Yeah, and we should probably mention with Hakimi, he's been in the news. He was allegation made against him, and I believe he's been since indicted for rape. He's denied these allegations. His lawyer has said he'll be cleared of all these charges, and then they're just going through the formalities. We're not going to get into a debate about that, but with everything that has happened legally, I think he can still travel to Germany for the Bayern Munich game. So he'll be available. Now, where his head's going to be at with all the legal issues that are going on is yet to be seen. But there's no question. He certainly makes PSG better when he's able to play and has a clear mind. So I just wanted to, if you're wondering if we're going to talk about that, this is probably as much as you're going to get about that. We're just going to let it play out through the courts, and we'll see what happens. So, but as far as on the pitch, he should be available. Let's real quick, Ethan, let's talk about Kimpembe, because in this match against Marseille, he goes down heartbreaking fashion. We learn later it was a torn or ruptured, I'm not sure what the word is, but his Achilles, which is pretty devastating. They said that he's going to be out until probably this fall. I would say probably it's going to be a little longer. A lot of times we see athletes with these injuries and they're out for at least a year. So his contract expires in 2024, I believe. He has no contract extension. I think PSG offered him one. But Ethan, what should the club do with Presnel Kimpembe with this major injury? He's had a history of injuries, but he's come up through the academy. He's PSG through and through. I know what I would do, but I'm curious what you think the club should do with Presnel Kimpembe at this point.
All right, yeah. So I have seen on Twitter kind of what you said in the last week or so about potentially extending Kimpembe, but if I were the club, it's a little tough, but you kind of have to put a hold on contract negotiations now, at least for until you can see how he comes back from the injury. If he comes back from the injury and the guy just can't really move, he's just not confident with his feet and his legs and his footwork, then obviously that's a huge red flag. But at the same time, he is Kimpembe. He's Presto. He's our one of our TTs, and it'd be really tough to let him go. So I do want to see how he comes back from the injury. That said, people always just ask, I feel like, especially on social media, people just ask really vague questions like, should we extend him? Should we let him go? And people always just give a yes or a no, but it's definitely black and white, because how much money is he going to ask for? What is he going to demand? I don't know what he's on right now. Probably about 10 to 15 mil a year as far as salary wise. If he's going to be asking for 20, and we're not going to know what he's looking like coming back from this injury, then I don't think you can justify re-signing him. But if he really wants to get an extension done before he's back from his injury, if we can get him to negotiate for a couple million less than what he's on right now, then great. I just don't see him agreeing to that, So there's a gray area. Although I would love to keep him at the club. I'm really partial to French players, and especially guys who came through the academy. So I feel like we need him there. There aren't enough guys at PSG right now that'll play for the badge, and he's definitely one of them. So, but then again, at what cost? We can't be. This isn't the Leonardo charity show anymore. We got to be smart with the money we're handing out in these contracts. But yeah, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I know the whole charity thing. You don't want to get into that as the club and just throw money away, especially with financial fair play, looking at PSG a little closer these days. But yeah, I think he's been at the club. He's come up through the ranks, and he just, we saw him. I forget what match it was. It was a difficult loss, and he's out there with the megaphone talking to the ultras, saying they're going to work harder and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he really is a leader, even if he's not officially the captain. So with all that being said, I would like to see PSG offer him something to keep him at the club, to ease his mind during his recovery. I'm fine if that contract or whatever it is they offer him has incentives in it. So if you start in X amount of games, we bump up your salary. If not, this is sort of the baseline, and maybe it's really low. What I don't want to see happen is his time just kind of fizzles out. He's in the training room getting, recovering, and then he just kind of leaves quietly, and we never see him again, and he's playing, in Belgium or something like that. Like, I feel like that would be a very sad end for a player who probably could have left when he was, he's been with the French national team, which is not an easy side to get into. So I'd hate for that to happen. He just kind of leaves quietly and with kind of like a thud. So if PSG can give him a contract with some incentives. And on the flip side, we have seen athletes come back. I watch a lot of basketball, and you think about, I believe Kevin Durant had something similar. Was it Klay Thompson's had something similar? I think even Kobe Bryant had an Achilles. And these are all players that have come back and were able to perform at a high level. And so I think Kimpembe it's going to be a lot of work. And so I think if PSG can show some goodwill, give him a contract with some incentives, let's see how he recovers. I think that'll go a long way in the dressing room. We saw all the players on social media. He's clearly a player who's loved. They want him there. I think it'll go a long way with the players in the team already, and also around Europe. PSG kind of has this this feeling of other players think you just go there for the money and what have you. I think this would show a little bit more of a human side to them, that they actually care about players, and maybe that will entice some players abroad that want to give PSG a chance and maybe come here and play. So I think a lot more good things can come from giving Kimpembe a contract than saying, nope, you're injured now, sorry, and see you later after next season. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I like that line that you gave. show a little bit of a human side to the club. A lot of people who aren't PSG fans, they do kind of just look at PSG as a money making machine. We're just out here for the marketing money, and but no, I agree. I think that he needs to stay at the club. It's just whether, and I think he probably, I think he loves PSG too much. If he got what is probably deemed a fair contract, to kind of turn it down. I don't see him as a guy who's really going to chase the bag going to Spain or England. I know he's briefly talked about, playing abroad, and I don't think he'll be a one club man for us. I think eventually he will leave and go somewhere, but I agree. I think it'd be too early. And he's such an important, if you just look at Instagram posts and you look at, what the players put on their social media and what they say in interviews, especially for all the young guys, for the entire what we call the elite group of all the young guys, the TDs, like Ayman Kari, Ilyas Husni, Warren Zaire-Emery, all those guys, Bitshiabu, all those dudes. It's like most of them almost see Kimpembe as a father figure in a little bit. So, yeah, I agree. I think he needs to stay. I just don't think we can submit to, if he's going to ask for some ridiculous salary, we can't be giving that out. But I trust Campos to not do that. Like I said, Leonardo's not here, so yeah, that's all I got for that.
Yeah, no, those are excellent thoughts. Let's stick with the injury bug here for a second, because you were at the match where Neymar goes down against Lille, turned his ankle. What else is new? And he goes down, obviously in a lot of pain. Don't think it's anything broken, sprain, high ankle sprain, whatever you want to call it. He's been trying to get back. There was some optimism he might be back for the Bayern Munich match, but Galtier, I saw today, has essentially ruled him out against Bayern Munich. So I caught some flack from all of Neymar's admirers on Twitter for kind of being critical for him going to McDonald's after the loss to Bayern. Neymar had posted a picture of him with like a boot around his ankle or something, and I said, I hope McDonald's delivers. So maybe not the best thing I tweeted, but yeah, a lot of Neymar fans got after me for that one. I've sort of come to the point where I'm just kind of tired of Neymar at this point. Great player. When he's healthy, he does contribute at a very high level. He's just not reliable. Literally every February, I'm not going to get into the stupid memes and rumors about why he's injured in February, but every season when we need him, when it's the Champions League, he's out. He's injured. One time we've had him and we made it to the Champions League final. So, I'm with you. Great player. He is just, for the amount of money that we spend on him, and I say we like it's my money at PSG, but the amount of money that PSG spends on him, to not have him for the second half of the season, unfortunately, I think he's got to go this summer. Cut your losses. If Chelsea want to pay 50, 60 for him, I'd sell him. I've had enough. I've had enough of the nonsense on social media. He's not available. But he rolls his ankle for Brazil in the World Cup, and sure as shit, he's back there in the knockout stage ready to go. But here we are, Bayern Munich, and he can't play. So I'm just over it. I'm curious what you think about the whole Neymar situation.
Yeah, that's funny that you kind of got roasted on Twitter for the McDonald's photo. I think, that was right after the Bayern match, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was after Mbappe was like, we need to get some sleep. We need to eat better. And then Neymar's out here playing poker till 2 a.m. and then going to McDonald's with his friends. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love me some McDonald's. But, if I'm an athlete and my teammate just said that, I'm not having my friends post a picture of me and post it on social media. It's just be smarter, read the room, and he can't do it. And I'm just frustrated. I'm like, you're good, but you're not that good anymore, and you're not available half the time. So I think it's time for him to go.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my buddy after that, because we were after the match, the Bayern match, we just kind of walked around town, and we were out pretty late, just kind of hanging out at whatever kind of quiet bars were still open in Paris. But we did see that photo as we were getting back for the night. And it was his reaction. He's Parisian. He's a big Mbappe guy, and as you side with a lot of Parisians on this. A lot of them are also kind of done with Neymar, and he was pretty upset about that. I don't think, in the days after that, we kind of saw. I don't think that Mbappe was personally directing that at him, but it's just still not a good look, and he may not have even been eating there. Maybe he wasn't. It's just still not a good look. There's this quote I saw on. Someone said this right after that photo was taken. It was who needs enemies when you've got friends like Neymar's to post those kind of photos.
That's a great quote.
Yeah, it is. I don't know who said that, but someone out there. But that's just not what you want to see. And then I'm trying to think, what were some of the other points you're giving? As far as Neymar staying or leaving, I'm really torn. I think I posted something about 2 weeks ago where this was before the injury, and I think this may have even been before the first leg, the Bayern match. But I said, I've been back and forth on this for a while, but I think I've kind of decided I do want Neymar to stay, but I do not think all of M&M can stay at PSG. So that's why at least right now, I'm on the train of not extending Messi, but it is just tough because just the dynamic of all three of them and where all of them are at in their careers. You've got let's say I think someone said when you put out on Twitter a couple hours ago, everyone posts your questions that you want us to answer. Someone that follows me, I can't remember who it is. I don't have my phone in front of me, but someone said do the keep or sell edition for Eminem. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump into that, and then I want to see what you want to say about it. But the pros and cons of keeping Mbappe, obviously he's probably the best player in the world, but we could make 250 million or more off of him if we sell him. Neymar could make 50 to 80 mil and get that big contract off the books, but I feel like he, of all the three of them, wants to leave Paris the least. So I actually said this just earlier today. If Neymar leaves in the summer and Chelsea pay whatever for him, it's going to be because we probably forced him out, and I just feel like it's going to be a really ugly way to end his tenure in Paris, because I think he wants to stay at the club probably more than the other two, and I am just not sure that. I don't know. It's just tough to say when he loves the club so much.
I don't know if it's love. I think it's that he knows he's injury prone now. He knows that he doesn't have his pick of any team that he wants to go to. And if he does go to Chelsea, look at all the players they just signed, and they all play pretty much the same position that he does, and they probably don't get injured as much. And I think he knows that PSG, he has a lot of power, and he can say, I want to play, and he can choose the coach or have some influence in that. If he goes somewhere else, he may be riding the bench. He may not get played that much. The manager may not like him. He probably doesn't want to go to the Premier League. So, a few years ago, he was all happy to leave. He said he wasn't happy. He wanted to go back to Barcelona. And now he's like, no, I want to stay. Well, yeah, I know why you want to stay.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I guess I didn't think about it in that light too much. But I don't know. And then just if we don't extend Messi, then, we'll lose out on some marketing revenue. But I think we need to move away from being a marketing club, basically. That era has come and gone. It
is going to be interesting. I don't know if you saw right before we started recording, and we're recording here on Friday, March 3rd, that Messi was sitting down with the club media for an interview, and there's some speculation about, is he announcing what he's doing with his future, whether it's a contract extension or if this is his last year. We'll have to see. But there's some message coming from Messi here in the next hours or days.
Yeah, I actually did see that. I didn't really think much of it, but I did see that he posted that. But gosh, I don't know. I just think, I don't know. I guess I'm so wishy-washy on this situation where I said a couple weeks ago that, I wanted Mbappe and Neymar to stay, and now just with this injury and everything, I don't know. It's so hard to say. I think Mbappe needs to stay. If we're going to end up losing him on a free to, whoever, probably Real Madrid in the future, then so be it. But I feel like it's tough to figure out because I think most people would agree, given our wage bill situation, and that I don't think we can keep all three of them. I know personally, I'm really big into the finances of football, and if you just look at our wage bill until the season that we made the final, in 2020, all the years prior, our wage bill was actually at a pretty healthy number, as far as the ratio of revenue to club expenses. But in the last 2 years or 3 years, coincidentally, right as Leonardo came back, I'm a big Leonardo hater, if anyone doesn't know that. But right as Leonardo came back, then all of a sudden, these expenses kind of outweighed the revenue. So I just think what we're doing right now is unsustainable. Campos is really good at managing money. He's very frugal, and I think that's a really good thing. But I feel like one of them has got to go. And, whoever you want that to be, that's up to you. Obviously, you want it to be Neymar. Other people are going to be Messi. Some people even want Mbappé out. But I don't know. It's a tough thing that the club's going to have to wrestle this summer, I think.
Yeah, I can't imagine Mbappe leaving. If I was playing this game, keep Mbappe, sell Neymar to anyone who wants to write a check, and then let Messi go. Let both of them go. I say Sergio Ramos, he can go as well. Let's just look down the starting. Let's look down the lineup. I mean, you
do want Messi to leave then.
Messi's got to go. Neymar's got to go. Ramos has got to go.
I agree.
It's probably easier to say who I wouldn't want to leave. Mbappe, stay, keep him to the end of the contract. Hakimi, hopefully the legal issues go away, but I think he's untouchable as a right back. I think he's probably top 5, maybe top 3. Nuno Mendes, I think he's the best left back in the world right now. I would keep him. Those are really my only, and even Verratti I would let go for the right price just because he's just unreliable as skilled as he is. I mean, if Pep Guardiola wants to come in and go, I think this team needs a complete rebuild, and those are the only 3 players, Mbappe, Hakimi, and Mendes, that I would keep. Donnarumma, love him. If someone wants to come in and pay us for him, take him. It needs a complete rebuild, and I would do it through the academy, through Ligue 1 players, and some young players. Manu Kone has been linked with PSG. He played in Ligue 1 before. I would build through players like that. Bring back Moussa Diaby if you can. That's how I would build this team. But those are the only 3 players that I think, don't even call me about. I'm not selling them.
Wow. I didn't expect you to say all of those.
Yeah.
I definitely think, Neymar or Messi needs to leave, and I'm definitely open to both leaving this summer. Yeah, Ramos I'd get rid of. I know he's just starting to find his form, but he's like 38. So what were you saying?
Yeah, I should probably also throw in Kimpembe. I wouldn't sell him even if someone came in, because I think if you can get back to where he was, great. If not, he's going to be leading my academy. I'm going to make him a coach, and he's going to help with the academy and help the players stick around and share his love for Paris with those kids so that they don't leave abroad. So I would also keep Kimpembe.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But Marquinhos, he hasn't been great, and if he's not going to play defensive midfield or anything for the right price, I would sell him too.
Dang, wow, that's pretty harsh. I feel like if we did all that, it would take a lot of squad rebuilding like this summer. And but no, I agree. Kimpembe, I would like to see him be a one-club man and stay the whole time and be just like Kamara, who's the current coach of the under-23 team. He's a guy kind of like that. I don't know if Kamara came up through the youth academy, but he's been at PSG for so long, and yeah, he gives sort of similar vibes to Kimpembe. Loves the youth players. So I agree, but I'm probably keeping Marquinhos. I'm probably keeping Verratti. I mean, unless someone's going to seriously overpay, which, I wouldn't expect that for any of these guys. But I feel like for the wage bill, if we get rid of 1 or 2 of, Neymar and or Messi, get rid of Ramos, and then, most of the guys that we have on loan right now, we're not going to be able to sell most of them when they come back, let's be honest. I think Campos probably knew that, though. He's just trying to minimize the damage that Leonardo did. But, if we can sell guys like, if we could sell guys like Icardi, I know Paredes is certainly coming back. I kind of think it was funny as I don't think we talked a bunch of transfer business. Well, I guess we can't because we didn't do any. I guess we didn't talk lack of transfer business, but other than the Ziyech thing falling through at the last minute because Chelsea basically sabotaged it, we basically gave Ander Herrera to Athletic Club Bilbao. We gave him to them. We didn't get a transfer fee, but I just think, the business decisions that Campos is going to have to make this summer to create a sustainable, environment, sustainable squad here. Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. I don't even really like to speculate, who might we bring in the summer or who's going to leave. It's easier to talk about who might leave, but to talk about who might come in the summer, there's hundreds of options. We have no idea where Campos is head at, but it is a little easier to talk about, who we want to kind of get the hell out of here. And but yeah, I just think things got to change. I don't know if I would do a complete rebuild. I actually did kind of say that after the Marseille Cup defeat last month, but I think I was being a bit reactionary. But I personally, I disagree with you there. Not a complete overhaul, but I do think probably 4 of our 10 highest paid players got to go.
Yeah, that'll certainly help with the wage bill. And, we're going to have Leandro Paredes. I think I saw Juventus isn't going to, buy him after the loan. We have Julian Draxler. He'll come back. Xavi Simons, I think he's a player. It was a free transfer, but I think he can come back to PSG. He's the type of player that I would like to see come back and we build up. Might take a couple years. Maybe we miss out on the Champions League for a season. But I just, you look at Arsenal, for example, they've been down for a little while. Arteta has been building, signing the right players, bringing up the youth. And now look, they're top of the Premier League table. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see done. And Paris has much better talent to choose from. And they have the resources more than Arsenal. So that's the sort of rebuild project that I want to see. I think a lot of the ultras would prefer that instead of these signing superstars. But I think we are getting away from that era. There really are no superstars bigger than Messi and Neymar. So who else are you going to get? So I think let's Campos bring it back to reality. Let's sort out some of these players that are coming back. Let's get rid of them, get rid of the high wage earners, and let's just be much, much smarter with the funds that we have. Ethan, we're coming up on time. We got several more topics to cover here. So let's keep it moving. I want to ask about, speaking of money, Qatar. There's been a bid from our ownership group. They want to buy Manchester United. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this because it's not Manchester United talk. But what are some of the ramifications that you can see occurring to PSG if they are essentially maybe a sister club of Manchester United, if they both share the same owner group? How do you feel about that, and what do you think the ramifications could be for PSG? Less money to spend potentially?
Well, I've never been the biggest QSI guy, and I've heard so many conflicting reports. I've heard that the group that bid on United, they're Qatari, but they're not basically QIA or QSI. I tried to look into this, but it's hard to keep track of all the guys in the Qatari government over there. So
yeah, it's the same. It's
I think the guy that technically is the one that bid on United is the one that I think he is a nephew or an uncle to the current Emir, but I don't think he's in the government.
He's a son. I think he's the son. Yeah, and I think
okay.
You're right. It's not like Qatar Sports Investments. It's different, but at the end of the day, it's basically the country of Qatar.
Is it? Okay, I was wondering about that. I'm really not sure, but if that's the case, then I mean,
I'm looking at an article here, and it's father of Qatari Manchester United bidder Sheikh Yassim admits he doesn't like the investment and isn't even a football fan, but says his son is still pushing hard to get a £4.5 billion deal done. So yeah, it's definitely Qatari. It may not be the exact ownership group that we have. It may not be an organization. It could be just a guy over there that just has a lot of money from his parents that's trying to buy the club. But I don't know. How do you feel about that? So just looking at some of like Twitter, some of them are all for it. Manchester United fans, some of them are like, no, look at PSG. All that money doesn't mean anything. I don't know. Just kind of general thoughts about that.
Yeah, general thoughts. Money does not buy wins in football. I think we've seen that. I think Chelsea the last 2 months has seen that. I think Man City has seen that. So I don't. It is weird though. I don't know if we've seen anything quite like this. I mean, you look at the Red Bull group with Leipzig and Salzburg. It's not quite the same because you wouldn't call Salzburg a Champions League contender or a potential Champions League contender. Whereas if they had United and us, obviously they've got two of the top 8 teams in the world probably. So I don't know if QSI wants to buy United, then I wouldn't mind if they sold us. Yeah, we might have less money. We might, but there are plenty of rich owners out there. And I don't know. It just feels like they'd be kind of, excuse my language, but kind of half-assing it. I don't want them to be half-assing it with both clubs if they're really going to want to have both clubs. So
only full asses. That's all we want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Full asses at PSG.
I haven't thought much about it, but I guess that's kind of the only thoughts I have so far.
Well, let me, sticking with ownership and injuries and police incidents and all this. James Teague over on the Discord, he helps us run our Discord server, and he's been on the show a few times. Hey, James, if you're listening. So he wants to know, with all the noise around player transgressions and board member transgressions, and I think he's referring to, we haven't even talked about this one, but Nasser Al-Khelaifi being accused of kidnapping and torturing a journalist. Again, we're not going to get into these, but he allegedly did that as he's being accused of this. So that's what he's pointing to there with the board member transgressions. And he wants to know, at what point does it become enough to question the ownership of the club? Is there a time when the money is not worth it and allow the fans to just be conscious about the football and winning Europe's most coveted prize? So basically he's saying with all this going on, it's constantly off the pitch stuff and like really serious stuff, like kidnapping a journalist and torture, allegedly. At some point, do you think the fans need to, and I know there's been some protests, but like, do we really need to ratchet this thing up and get a new ownership group in here? What say you?
Oh, that is hard to say, especially because if a protest was going to come out, it would be from the ultras in Paris, because we've seen how active they can be on certain topics in the past. But you asked, when does all this become not worth it as far as the money? And for me personally, I almost think, well, I mean, I don't think, going back to the Hakimi thing for a second, I don't believe that, the accusation is true. But if it is true, then obviously we've got serious problems because that's just not acceptable in any form. If this thing with Nasser is true, if he actually kidnapped and tortured a journalist, that's obviously not acceptable either. It would be a really weird thing because he's he's the president. He's basically he's viewed as the owner, even though he's not. But if this kind of stuff is true, me personally, I'm almost at the end of my rope with this kind of stuff, and I was kind of asking for ownership changes a couple of years ago. I feel like that kind of died down the last the last year or two, but I am definitely I'm open to welcoming in a new ownership group. Just like you said, I don't think the money is worth it anymore. There are things that are bigger than football. We'd love to see PSG open up a European dynasty, but if it's going to be at that cost, I mean, you look back at the only Champions League title that a French club has won. Marseille essentially purchased theirs. Their president was involved in bribery of Liga and Champions League opponents. They were a very sleazy organization, and on top of that, their players admitted to that the club had a performance-enhancing drug, a PED program at the club. If PSG are going to win the Champions League and there's going to be this weird asterisk on it like that, like Marseille did, with all these, these cheating things that they were found guilty of, or all these, public scandals, then yeah, I don't want it. I'd rather not win the Champions League ever than be having this dynasty that's going to have this kind of stuff around it. So that's my take on it. What's yours?
Yeah, I'm with you. Starting with Hakimi, if it comes out that it's true and the courts prove that out, then I think you got to figure out a way out of that contract and separate yourself. Same thing with Nasser. If there's even a shred of truth to this, he's got to go. And like you, I think I'm at the end of my rope. It kind of ties into my no player other than those couple are untouchable. I think a complete rebuild is necessary, and I don't think Qatar will do that. I don't think they want to be out of the Champions League for any length of time, even a season. So I don't think we'll get a complete rebuild under them, even though I think it's necessary. And yeah, I think what makes this tricky is that if QSI are forced to sell, right? Who's going to come in and buy? This club has been valued at billions and billions of dollars. Who's going to come in and buy that for a club in the fifth best league, maybe sixth best after this season in Europe? Who's gonna do that? I don't know. You don't really have the marketing and all that behind like you do with the Premier League. So who's going to buy that? You have no penetration really in America through beIN Sports. I just wouldn't think it's a great investment. You'd have to find basically another country to come in and buy PSG for sports watching purposes, because no savvy investor is going to be like, yeah, that makes good sense, because very few have the kind of deep pockets like Qatar does. So they're not going to be able to put as much money into it. You're not going to be able to get Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe and receive all the marketing benefits from that. So, and then in addition to that, you have, I think the Super League is a very real thing that's going to be coming. And if we do get another owner who maybe doesn't have as deep pockets, who isn't as willing to spend, do we get left out of the Super League? And then are we just some middling team, like PSG were before QSI? And they had their ups and downs, but let's just be frank. I mean, PSG were not world beaters. They weren't a European superpower like they are now. Do we get left behind in the Super League, and then we're tuning in, watching some young French players doing well? Maybe we have a season, here and there where we do well, and then we have to sell them to stay, financially viable. It's kind of like, do you want to take the bad and get all the benefits of Super League, Champions League titles and all that, or go another route and do a rebuild and get maybe an owner that's a little bit more financially responsible, and maybe once or twice a decade we get to have that kind of excitement that we're experiencing almost every season now. It's something I think fans are going to have to come to grips with, and I think I would be okay with different ownership and watching a team and being left out of Champions League and Super Leagues and all that, if it means we can build the right team and not have all these headaches. I speak for myself. It sounds like you're kind of leaning that way too, but a lot of fans maybe not. Maybe they don't feel like that. It's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think most fans would probably share our sentiment, or at least international PSG fans. I think a lot of Parisian supporters would, although, yeah, like you said, it would be tough if we ever had to go back to the colony capital days, 2000 and I know they were there before, but like 2004 to 2008, those were some rough times in club history.
Relegation,
fighting relegation twice. One, in 2008, avoided relegation on the final day. If we had scored one less goal and Lens had scored one extra goal in their match, then we would have been relegated in 2008. It would be really tough to go that way. I guess. I guess I didn't think we were going to get so. I guess what is existential, the phrase on this episode, but yeah, this is kind of the turn it took. But I agree. I don't think, and then again, I'm an optimist, but I don't see PSG getting left out, especially if a Super League starts pretty soon. Even if we get an owner in the next couple of years who isn't as willing to spend, because we've had rich owners. Colony Capital was actually pretty loaded. Canal Plus before that had a lot of money, not quite the money as QSI, but other than when the club was socio-owned in the 70s, PSG have actually had pretty rich owners comparative to other clubs for their whole history. But you're right, QSI was the only one that was super willing to come in and spend. But I would see it hard for us getting left out of a Super League in the next couple of years, even if we changed owners, just because even if the finances kind of go away, if our wage bill is cut to half or a third of what it is now, we're still going to be, most years, we're still going to be finishing top 3 in Liga and qualifying for the Champions League. But I don't know, maybe that's the optimist in me. But yeah, I guess that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, it's one thing to have rich owners. It's another one. It's another thing to have a rich owner who wants to spend and puts people in place that can spend that money wisely. It's difficult to find owners like that. You know, Chelsea are experiencing that now. It's like, great, you have a rich owner who can spend, but do you really need 7 players that cost $80 million that play the same position? I don't know. I don't think you do. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out. Ethan, we're coming up on time. I want to get your prediction for PSG versus Bayern. We may or may not talk before then. We talked about maybe doing a Twitter Spaces, but let's just get you on the record now because, you know, life happens. So let's get you on the record, and I'll do the same. What is your prediction? PSG at Bayern Munich, down 1-0 on aggregate. What happens?
Yeah, I'm an optimist, so I'm going 2-1 at Bayern. Or 3-1, but if it's 2-1 and it goes to extra time, I'm gonna give us the advantage on penalties, even though we won't have Neymar, best penalty taker in the world. Like I said, I'm confident in the team, feeling pretty good now. I'm gonna go, if we get by, it's gonna be by a goal or penalties.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. Well, and we're kind of overlooking Saturday's match tomorrow, March 4th against Nantes at home at the Parc. I'm thinking a lot of PSG starters might get a few minutes in that one, maybe play a half, 45 minutes, something like that, maybe an hour, and then make their way off just to save their legs. So PSG versus Bayern. I'm usually the one who's optimistic on these things. I just can't see it happening. I just can't. I think the only way it happens is if Mbappé plays out of his mind. If him and Messi link up against, like they did against Marseille, and they can do that against Bayern, I think we got a chance. I think PSG does score. They do score. I just think Bayern at home with that momentum and PSG's shaky defense, I think that they're also going to score. So I could see this one ending 1-1, and then Bayern would go through 2-1. That's how I'm seeing this one. I hope I'm wrong. But for once, I'm going to be a little bit negative on this. I think PSG crash out. I will give Mbappe the goal for PSG, but it's not going to be enough. And I think we're also going to see a little controversy. We saw in the first match, PSG had a couple of goals that were disallowed due to VAR. I think this one, PSG are going to get screwed somehow, some way. And we'll have that as a talking point for the next show. So that's my prediction, Ethan.
All right. Yeah, that's... I was thinking from the first leg, it should have ended 1-1. Nuno being fractionally offside on that goal, was the only reason that game didn't end as a draw.
He was offside by a kneecap.
Yeah, a kneecap, it happens. But I still think, I don't know. I don't think Nagelsmann is any, this is not 2020 Bayern. This is not, and I'm actually... I kind of follow Stuttgart in the Bundesliga a little bit, and their next match is against Bayern. So the next 2 Bayern matches will be against 2 teams that I follow closely. Obviously PSG, who I love, but I'll get to see their, how they do against a team battling relegation in the Bundesliga tomorrow. And I don't know. I feel pretty good about our chance. I mean, I feel like the first leg should have ended 1-1. And if we're cooking, I know that, people are going to say Bayern will also come out probably cooking, but I just feel, we look at the last half hour, what Mbappe was doing. If that had been the game for 90 minutes, we probably scored 2 or 3. We're going to get him for 90 minutes. I don't think the guys are necessarily scared of Allianz, arena or stadium, whatever the technical name is. And we've seen. You did say if Mbappe has a phenomenal game, then I think we got a chance. I feel like Mbappe is a bit of the last 2 years. He's a big game player. At the new camp a couple years ago, against Real Madrid in both legs last year, scored our only goals. Should have had 3 or 4 goals over the tie. I feel like he is that big game player. I expect him to do that. You're right though. If he falls short and he doesn't have a great game, we're definitely getting eliminated. But I feel like we're going to see another Champions League away game masterclass from the current best player in the world. I feel like I'm almost just expecting it now.
I really, really hope you're right. One thing that I also hope to see is the PSG fans who travel. I hope they hold up banners complaining about the price of everything from parking to the bratwurst to the beers. I've never seen the German fans complain about the prices of everything. I wish they would come to the United States. You and I are college football fans and football fans. If they only knew how much it costs for a season ticket at some of these, USC or somebody. I mean, they were complaining about €70 for a Champions League ticket. It's like, sit down.
I actually didn't see that in the stadium. They were kind of to the side of me, and I could only I didn't have a great angle at all their tifos and banners. But I think at the end of the game, my buddy and I saw that. We're thinking, wow, their tickets were only €70, huh? I wish our tickets had only been €70. Ours were much higher than that. That would be funny if we came complaining about the bratwurst and the bratwurst was €4, not €3. That'd be funny.
It's just, they are just worse than my grandparents complaining about like a cell phone bill. Just everything. Anyway, I digress. So, Ethan, let's go ahead and get out of here. Let the folks listening know how they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, on Twitter, it's at PSG_Boise.
Fantastic. And if you follow me, I always retweet Ethan, so you'll see him pop up there. And just a couple of quick shout outs. If you haven't been to psgtalk.com, make sure you get over there, especially every Monday. Jonathan Johnson, who's a journalist for CBS Sports, covering all things PSG, French football, Champions League. We brought him on board. He's running a column for us, and so go over there and check out what he's got to say. And we got some other things in the works, but I can't talk about it right now. But we're working on improving the site, bringing you all the interesting PSG stuff that you're craving. Hopefully you enjoy this podcast. Thank you as always for listening. Make sure you subscribe. Leave us a little review if you listen on Apple, if that's where you get your podcast. So anyway, I'm Ed. Follow me at PSG Talk. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.